Since this is actually a driverless car, why there is still a driver? Because the race is about to kick off, please show me why there is a driver in a car, since it is a driverless car. Now it is already under autopilot mode. You can see that the steering wheel is moving automatically. And even if the human driver is like really stepping on the pedal, then it is under auto drive mode, so it will not affect the car's operation. And sometimes it's probably likely for a driverless car to get lost when it comes to a crossroad. But you can still see that the steering wheel is operating automatically. What about the road? Did you put a road in the car in the first place? So what's on this screen is the road being sensed by this car and by the LiDAR installed on the car. This driverless car is already forecasting the road for the upcoming dozen of seconds. Sometimes when it comes to a turning, it takes a few seconds for the car to process. Here, what I can see here is that different from human driver, turning isn't as smooth as it is under human driving mode. We spent 2 days to learn about the protocol. So it's going to be slightly different from human driver. Previously, there were a lot of challenges being mentioned, such as S-band or some traffic light. There's going to be a U-turn just around the next corner. And now you can see it is climbing up the slope. And later, we're going to pass another spot, a gas station. And the car is going to be added with some fuel. So actually, the road section here is a closed road section. It's like it's within a park. It's really like when you're using Baidu mapping. You know that in this map there is a gas station, and you know there are a bunch of buildings and also the parking lot. So in this competition, there are some settings for each section of the competition. For instance, there will be a score given for one challenge. All the OEMs are now working on auto parking, such as Toyota. So now it's a little bit hard for the car to be parked by itself for driverless car. There will be some presettings. For instance, what will be a parking lot, and then later there's going to be a pretty difficult slope for the car to climb, and it's a challenge for the driverless system. A lot of functions of this car are not that perfect yet. If we can have more time, it's going to be much better. Yeah, what we can say is that it's 90% down, and still there is a 90% left. As for driverless car, to make it move, it's a piece of cake. But to make sure that in all sorts of use case, the car has to be able to recognize the situation. It takes a lot of effort and time. That's why Google has been doing driverless car for almost 10 years, and finally they had some achievements. And all these prestigious universities like Stanford, they're also making experiments on autonomous driving. And Cook, who is the CEO of Apple, who also mentioned that autonomous driving is going to be the ultimate expression of artificial intelligence. There's no pedestrians on the street, right? For safety concerns, there's no pedestrians, and the car, when it is about to be added with some fuel, it is going to brake. You can see this is like avoidance, and there can be some incidents happening on the road, and the system is going to deal with it. And now there is a very steep downward slope. It is very difficult to control this process. You can see that there are some problems, some shaking, but the positioning is still working quite well. Now the car is about to turn right. So this is a S-bend. And now is a challenge with a very narrow lane for the car. To not run into any of these is a very difficult challenge. I think this SUV is doing quite well, passing through without bumping into any of these. Yeah, actually, we were so worried that something could probably happen. Now we are at the end point of this challenge. So what's your next step? What's going to happen is that there's going to be avoidance function being further promoted in the car. For instance, when there's a pedestrian or there's any blockers, the car will be able to avoid them as much as possible. And just now, you found there were some bumpy sections, and the bumpy performance is also something we need to work further on. I think it is really a little bit scary for us to take a driverless car. Probably the system is not up and running 100%. I was invited on a car, and I was still kind of worried. Although the speed isn't that fast, if it is 100 km/h, I think my heart is gonna bump much harder. Exactly. Aside from writing codes, we sometimes are also risking our lives in one of these testings. Can we see the trunk? This is a battery. Is this a lithium-ion battery? Yeah, this is an electric vehicle. And for the computing system, there is another set of power supply. And that white box is the brain of the driverless car. Now the car is ready for some testing. Okay, let's take a look at the testing. So now there are two driverless cars. And they are going to have a tiny challenge. This car so far is doing better. And the other car is not ready yet. So now you guys are working on the driverless system. And what about your colleagues? Well, we have people from the UK, from the United States, from Egypt, and there are also people from Taiwan. So there are countries and regions involved in this project, right? Exactly. So you got a 4-day and a system you have been able to work out is going to be a challenge. Is going to face a challenge between the driverless car and human drivers. Yeah, there are going to be some human drivers arriving in the afternoon. You can always think how a human driver is going to make all the moves, just like the driverless car did. And sometimes it could be kind of challenging for the human driver as well when it comes to a special lane like this, but it's still a piece of cake. And when there are some turnings, they are more difficult for the driverless cars, but relatively easy for human drivers, such as climbing up a slope or turning. So actually, in Guizhou, there are a lot of hills for the cars to climb. So safety is very important, right? Exactly. Now we have LiDAR, which is serving as the eyes of the driverless car. The LiDAR is going to provide positioning quite well without GPS connection. The error rate is no more than 5 centimeters. So with LiDAR and various sensors, they're going to work in tandem with each other. In case that one of them is not working, the other one will catch up. So it's not relying on cameras, right? When there is quite complex weather conditions, like it's heavily raining, will the car still be able to run? Yeah, of course. As for safety concerns, we have a myriad of sensors that are working together. When there is special weather conditions, the LiDAR is going to work quite well. And for cameras, sometimes they can work under normal conditions. And when one of them is not working well, or when there is some sort of shaky conditions, they're going to work in a very collaborative way. Previously, we know AlphaGo has beaten human Game of Go players for every single match. It is self-learning capable. What about autonomous driving? Yeah, absolutely. The reason why, like Waymo, they've been tested for millions of kilometers, and the reason for this kind of repetitive training is because they're going to try to train the system to be more capable. As for the trainings, specifically, do you mean that for driverless car, there's going to be something special when it comes to training? we know that the memory of a person is not as capable as that of a machine. And for a machine, it is capable of memorizing a lot of experiences. For instance, when a car passes through a particular location, it is going to memorize this location and update it in the brain, so that next time when it passes through this location again, it is going to be able to recognize this location. And this is also going to be a boost to the mapping services, because with billions of cars hitting the road, they are constantly upgrading the road sections and the different locations along the road. So in that way, the total map of the city is going to be upgraded. What about a spontaneous reaction? It's not capable of spontaneous reaction, but it is able to memorize everything it met, right? Yeah, for most of the driverless cars, we believe that they are working on territories that are already known. However, there are also some companies that are doing exploration for uncharted territories to explore the unknown. There is no single solution that can be claimed as the very best in the world. And every company is trying to provide something they claim to be better. We have recruited some drivers here, right? Of course, human drivers are driving faster. And when it comes to some of the road conditions that are more challenging for driverless cars, human drivers can do a better job. So for engineers like you, can you reach a conclusion that it is never going to be the case when autonomous driving totally replacing human drivers? Do you think human driver is irreplaceable? What I can say is that for the short run, I can say this is a correct statement, but for the long run, I don't think so. Just like AlphaGo, compared with AlphaGo, autonomous driving is different, because all the changes on the plate of the game of Go is limited. So for the long run, you think it's possible for human drivers to be replaced by autonomous driving cars? Yeah, I'm quite optimistic about this business. I think with more data, more information, more input, there's going to be more improvement. And finally, there's going to be one day when human drivers are replaced by artificial intelligence-driven cars. And of course, there are still a lot of concerns when it comes to traffic accidents. Do you think it's likely for technology to make the situation much better? Now with deep learning, with advancing new technologies, developing very fast, I think it's legitimate for me to be optimistic that these problems are going to be smashed by new technologies. And of course, there's going to be some hurdles when it comes to legislation, when it comes to people's ethics. If all the political will and the ethical challenges and the legal barriers can be overcome, then in 5 to 10 years, it's likely for us to see some real autonomous driving cars. So if there's going to be some real autonomous driving cars, they're going to be running on restricted areas, right? What about some real-life case when it comes to a pretty badass traffic condition? Uber has 200 driverless cars running in Pittsburgh. I took several rides before, and what I felt is that their technology, their system have been rather mature, and when there are some quite difficult situations happening on the road, and they are able to cope with them. So I think as long as you invest money and talents into this, it's eventually going to pay off. And of course, everybody is having this $1 million question in mind. Who is going to win eventually, human driver or autonomous driving? For the long run, I think technologies replacing human drivers, or at least be as good as human drivers, to be able to keep the car running on the road smoothly. Maybe that's possible. And today, from what I saw here, there is still a big gap between the autonomous driving cars and human drivers. But do you think there's going to be one day we don't have to get a driving license? I hope that my kids won't have to get a driving license. Thank you for watching. Because the car is still being tested and some systems are not running and all geared up. This autonomous driving cars versus human drivers may not be able to happen today. And I thank you for watching.